Welcome to the world's 20 best, where we're taking you on a jet-fueled trip to seek out the #1 city in the world. So just what ingredients does a city need to make the grade?
It keeps you energised, it keeps you busy, you've got lots to do.
A good city should be a walkable city. It should have culture, nightlife and some really fab cafes and restaurants.
You've got to have, for a start, some wonderful architecture.
It's got to have history. It's got to have a lovely old quarter.
A bit of shopping helps.
But ultimately, it's the people that make a city.
Racking their brains to help us compile our chart of the planet's most exciting and vibrant cities is our panel of top travel journalists.
If I spend more than 6 hours in bed in a great city, then I failed.
So let's check out the city that kicks us off at number 20.
If you opened up a textbook for city, purely in terms of the architecture, it would be Tokyo.
Tokyo is the heart of the biggest megalopolis in the world.
It's like something out of Blade Runner.
I think Tokyo is quite possibly the ultimate 21st century city, this place of incredible steel and glass buildings, fantastically dramatic, imaginative structures.
It's quite frightening when you first go because it's like nothing you've ever seen before.
It's the energy and buzz that hit you the minute you set foot in the Japanese capital that helped to make it so unique. And with a population of over 12 million, the endless streams of busy people will leave you breathless, dazed and a little disorientated.
Yet, this is one place of the world where I just think, oh, I'm going to be all right. Nothing bad is going to happen because, look, I'm surrounded by all these friendly, helpful people.
With 1.6 million people passing through the station in the main Shinjuku district every day, it's amazing that people find time to earn the reputation of being so friendly. But Tokyo is also a city where you can go from high-tech to history in a matter of seconds. And behind Tokyo's electric-powered facade, you'll find a city steeped in Japan's imperial past.
You've got these wonderful old quarters where you can explore these charming little houses and go and take part in the tea ceremony. And you could be a million miles away from all that high-tech excitement, money, power.
The tea ceremony is another reason Tokyo makes our chart. It dates back to the 16th century and combines the Japanese values of simplicity, calm and grace. On top of all this, Tokyo is also the home of sushi, as well as a world-class fashion capital. So with so much to offer, why does Tokyo only make it to number 20?
The biggest drawback to Tokyo is you can feel a little bit sort of squeezed in and crammed in. The best thing to do about that is to make sure that your hotel room is quite big.
But the city is expensive, so you may have to make do with a capsule hotel at 20 quid a night. Good night, Tokyo. At number 19 is a city that many wouldn't expect to find in our chart, the Indian capital of Delhi.
If you want to go and relax, you go and stand in a field. Cities should be exhausting, dirty, full of people shouting.
You either love it or you hate it. And frequently, on the same day, in the same hour, you love and hate it.
Yes, there is poverty, yes, there is hassle, but once you get beyond that and once you get to meet some of the great people and see the amazing architecture and the sheer intensity of life, you're going to have a really rewarding time there.
So what makes this city one of the best in the world? One reason is Old Delhi. Here you can hire a rickshaw, hold your breath, dive straight into the bazaars to a whole new world of noise and chaos. And it's all bound together by a terrifying spaghetti of cables, never more than a few feet above your head. Like all great cities, as easily as you find the chaos, you can escape it. The 17th century Red Fort is one such refuge. And no Indian city would be complete without a remnant of the British Empire.
Down the road you have the red architecture in red sandstone of Lutchins. Classical British colonial architecture. Suddenly there's peace and quiet and serenity. Where else can you get those two places side by side?
Iceland, the land of fire and ice, is home to Reykjavik, the world's northernmost capital. Home to just a little over 100,000 people, it's hardly a giant among cities. But don't be fooled by its sleepy appearance. There's a lot more bubbling just beneath the surface.
Reykjavik's often compared with Reading, which is rather sad. Iceland, cold, snow, small, insignificant. Whoa, not on Friday night in Reykjavik.
The Icelandic capital is without doubt one of the world's wildest party towns, and for a night out, the good folk of Reykjavik are hard to beat.
I thought that the Icelanders would all be fishermen and wear woolly hats and funny boots. Instead, they're party animals.
But the locals aren't the only things getting hot and steamy. Iceland is arguably the globe's greatest geological wonder, providing glaciers, volcanoes and boiling hot geysers used to fill Reykjavik's 7 thermal baths, where Icelanders are known to get a little bit frisky.
Sometimes the girls go to the hot tub to gossip about boys, and the boys get to look at the girls in a little clothing for free, you know?
Sounds like someone needs a cold shower.
Anybody who lives very close to the Arctic Circle, thousands of miles from civilization, or at least Glasgow, is bound to be just a little bit different from everywhere else. So part of the fun of going to Reykjavik is meeting the Icelanders and finding that they're just a little bit strange.
And you don't get much stranger than this. Reykjavik lays claim to being the fairy capital of the world. A whopping 70% of locals believe in what they call the hidden people.
This is a typical house of hidden people and elf family. There are 2 families living here. They usually live in stone. Usually when they have good views, like we can see here, they have a view over the city. That's what the hidden people and the elves very dearly love.
Some are big, you know, but usually they're very small.
And then we have gnomes and dwarves and trolls and fairies and a lot of other beings.
I haven't seen them, but I believe in them.
3 down and 17 to go. Where will your favourite come? In part 2, old Europe faces off against the new world. And can Scandinavia's coolest customer topple the beating heart of South America?
This is really the heart of the Latin world.
Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to part 2, where we continue our countdown of the world's best cities. Creeping into our top 20 so far, futuristic Tokyo, the heat and dust of Delhi, and wild and wacky Reykjavik. Will your favourite fare better? At number 17 is a small city punching well above its weight. Wonderful, wonderful Copenhagen.
Copenhagen is probably the coolest city that you can imagine. It's the epitome of style.
Whether you're buying or just window shopping, the Danish capital has more designer labels than a supermodel's wardrobe.
And last time I was there, I couldn't believe it. I found myself getting excited over its knives and forks.
But in Copenhagen, not only can you shop in style, you can also flop in style. And even buildings that on the outside look like boring department stores can offer a few surprises, like the flashy Skit Patrie, transformed into a boutique hotel by designer Per Arnoldi.
This building is an ocean liner when you look at the corner. And that's what we try to preserve. You know, it's a modern place. The Danish design fame is based on our ambition to make everything around us a thing of quality. So in this hotel, I mean, the cutlery is George Jensen silver in the restaurant. They're going to steal it like mad.
Copenhagen's trendy hotels are backed up by top restaurants. Danish cuisine has come a long way since pickled herring and reindeer meatballs.
The last 10 years, it's been a rush in Copenhagen. We have a lot of new restaurants, more and more people from outside Denmark, Copenhagen, to go for a weekend or just a vacation in Copenhagen. So it's good.
The city also has more historic attractions than you can shake a Danish pastry at, and everything's packed within a mile of the city centre.
What I love above all about Copenhagen is that it's just such a human city. Everything seems to be designed on a human scale. You can just wander everywhere, you can walk, you can cycle.
You've got a few days, hire a bicycle and go up and down those little alleyways. It's a lovely city.
And 1 in 3 locals ride a bike. Thirsty work indeed, which is where the city's drinking holes come in, and bars range from traditional Danish cosy to cutting-edge cool.
There's this great Danish concept of hygge, which translates very roughly as coziness. For an awful lot of the time in winter, it's pretty cold and nasty outside, so everyone huddles together in these brilliant underground bars, all lit by candles, and you get this great sense of intimacy and really getting to know the local people.
Located against a dramatic backdrop of the Andes, at 16 is one of the finest cities in the Americas, Santiago de Chile.
People get worried about going to South America. Don't get worried about going to Chile. It's different. Santiago is an old Spanish colonial city. One to walk around, not one to be intimidated in.
Santiago is at the centre of Chile's booming economy and has become one of the chicest places in South America. And with a rich history, vibrant culture and the adventure of the Andes on its doorstep, you can see why Santiago makes our top 20. Bagging our 15th slot is the historical capital of Portugal, Lisbon.
It's a city of alleyways, of tiles, of trams going up hills.
It's fantastic for culture, it's historically interesting, and the people are really lovely too.
In centuries gone by, Portugal had one of the greatest empires, and Lisbon a glorious maritime past. And casting off from the banks of the River Tagus, Pedro Cabral reached Brazil, and Vasco da Gama found the route to India. Being such a seafaring nation, it seems only natural that the national dish is dried codfish, and these days the best place in town to eat it is at classy restaurants like the Casa de Bacalhau. But it wasn't always this way.
It was meant to be kind of food for the lower classes, so for the poor. There were no cooling systems at the 16th and 17th century, so it had to be dried and salted to be preserved.
Modern-day Lisbon attracts a younger set. The bar district, Bairro Alto, has some of the trendiest drinking holes in Europe. And what's more, this city is going to get even hipper. With some 20 million inhabitants, if size were everything, our next city would be the world's undisputed #1. It's Mexico City.
Mexico City is one of my favourite cities in the world. It is so vibrant and the culture so rich. You've got Aztec culture, you've got ancient ruins, you've got non-stop partying as well.
For centuries, Mexico's been one of the world's most important cities, firstly as the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, and then as the capital of New Spain in the 1500s. Most visitors head straight for the Zocalo, the historic square, built on the ruins of the original Aztec city.
At the heart of Mexico City, this immense square has history all around it. You've got the ancient Aztec city to one side, you've got incredible cathedral, you've got the Spanish colonial government buildings. This is really the heart of the Latin world.
And the beat of that heart is most evident in Mexico City's many street markets.
Your pound goes a long way against the Mexican peso. You can buy old-fashioned toys, handmade rag dolls, and gorgeous homeware, tablecloths, anything like that. Very, very cheap.
With ancient history, vibrant culture, great markets, and 20 million people, Mexico City is hanging in at number 14. It's a bourbon-soaked party town. It's home to Mardi Gras, the state's hottest carnival. It's the least American of all America's cities. It's New Orleans, and it's number 13 on our list of the world's 20 best cities.
New Orleans culture is a blend of French, of African, of Haitian, and of course of English.
You have all those influences wrapped into a sort of Louisiana New Orleans sandwich.
The soul of New Orleans is Jackson Square in the French Quarter. Here, tarot readers, performers and artists create a unique ambience.
It really is a Creole, a French place with this beautiful, antiquated French Quarter, totally unlike anything you'll see in most of America.
New Orleans is one of the few American cities with genuine history. Its past goes back 2 centuries to when Napoleon ruled Louisiana. Another aspect of New Orleans you won't see anywhere else in the country is the open flouting of voodoo, a lasting legacy of the city's Haitian influence. One of the most sought-after women in the Big Easy is Miriam Chamani, and it's not for her piano playing. She's a voodoo priestess.
The rituals that is most prevalent is love rituals. And it's because many people are looking to reinforce their love relationships. A lot of famous people come, but the one that came more openly was Nicolas Cage, and he wanted to have an advanced blessing for his wedding.
And the mystique of the city continues in the many ghost and vampire tours. New Orleans is arguably the most haunted city in the US of A.
What's even more strange is that in his kitchen there was no food in the house. There was just a wine rack filled with what appeared to be red wine. Later examination of the contents of the bottles proved that it was actually a combination of red wine and human blood. Fine Bordeaux indeed.
But if you haven't got the stomach for the ghost tours, you will have for the food.
I mean, if you travel around America a lot, you'll find a lot of the food is very repetitive. What New Orleans has is a very distinct type of food. Jambalaya, gumbo, all that great, wonderful Creole cooking is absolutely fantastic.
New Orleans is the food capital of the world. We have some of the best seafood around. Here we have a typical gumbo, which is basically crab and shrimp with seasoning in it. Here we have a redfish Perez, which is sauteed fish, sauteed crab meat, sauteed shrimp. And here we have our own banana foster, which is butter, brown sugar, cinnamon, banana liqueur, bananas, and you flambe it with a rum, put it over vanilla ice cream.
The great thing about this great American city is that it's totally genuine. And it's not just American, it's everywhere else, all rolled into one.
You really feel the weight of history in Berlin. This is somewhere which has reinvented itself from the ashes of destruction in World War II.
After the Second World War, Berlin was ripped apart by the Berlin Wall, a barrier that separated the city for over 50 years. On November the 9th, 1989, the wall finally fell and is now almost completely gone, leaving the Brandenburg Gate as the one reminder of that amazing day.
Suddenly it's unified, and it's also the most dramatically, rapidly changing city in Europe.
Berlin is one of the best cities in Europe to see modern architecture, like the Jewish Museum designed by Daniel Liebeskind.
Berlin has always been, in its history, a very avant-garde city, a city of great architecture. There have been fantastic ideas here of architecture. Of course, all of it had been destroyed through those tragic years of the Holocaust and of the war. But I think now Berlin is coming into its own, and it has to look back on its lost heritage and to see how it will connect itself back into a future that is positive.
Following its reinstatement as the German capital in 1990, Berlin continues to be revamped, and there's a hatful of sites to compete for your time.
If you've got to nominate one great site, I would have to say the Reichstag, the German Parliament building, which has this incredible dome, which you can kind of spiral down. It's an amazing site, and this is also the hub of the German Parliament.
And if all those buildings wear you out, then you can always fall back on the traditional German pastimes of drinking beer, watching cabaret, and experiencing the legendary German sense of humour. Then again, maybe not.
Amsterdam is the perfect weekend escape. It's got a swinging nightlife.
And there's canals, which is incredibly romantic. There's 160 canals in Amsterdam, and I think sort of 1,300 bridges or something. And there's wonderful canal boats, and it's a beautiful place to walk. Amsterdam is a very manageable place to walk around. It's a very pretty place to walk around.
And if you don't want to walk, it's a great place to explore by bicycle.
But best of all, it's got an amazing quantity of museum and art galleries, which is more extraordinary because it's such a small-sized city.
As well as being a culture vulture's paradise, Amsterdam is also home to 1,500 boozers, so it's a great place to kick back, relax, and watch the world go by from a canal-side bar. After the break, we reveal our top 10 best cities, including the gateway to the East.
It's a fusion of East and West, two religions, two continents.
And the place to go for a spot of Aussie urban culture.
One of my favourite cities in the world, because I like the beach.
Welcome back to the world's 20 best cities, where we're down to our last 10 candidates. But before we reveal what they are, let's remind ourselves of the story so far. At 20, the bright lights of Tokyo. At 19, the heat and dust of Delhi. At 18, a city to let off steam in, Reykjavik. And at 17, wonderful, wonderful Copenhagen. Santiago to Chile came in at 16, whilst Lisbon took us to the bridge at 15. At 14, we hung out in Mexico City. Whilst at 13, voodoo was no hoodoo for New Orleans. The weight of Berlin's history took it to number 12. And at number 11, Amsterdam with its beautiful canals. Which brings us to our 10th best city in the world.
Scandinavian countries have become very, very fashionable in recent months, and leading the pack in terms of cities is probably Stockholm.
Lots of people say, oh, Venice is beautiful because it's just carved up with all these waterways. Well, so is Stockholm. It's built on a whole series of islands. That really gives you a great sense of serenity because you're surrounded always by water.
Wherever you are in Stockholm, you've got these lovely sea breezes. You can sort of see the mast of a ship. People actually go to work in canoes. So it's a sea city.
Stockholm is split in very much into two parts. You've got the old town of Stockholm, which is a very thriving, buzzy, exciting, energetic, very youthful city. And then you've got the archipelago, which is this wonderful group of islands which people go to largely in the summer. You can take little boat trips out to them. And on those, each of those has their own separate little atmosphere and community.
And with some 24,000 islands of the archipelago to get through, Stockholm has a lot to keep you amused, and that's before you even start on the central attractions.
You don't need a map to explore the medieval parts of Stockholm. Just wander through the little back alleys and find out things for yourself.
Helping to push it to its lofty chart position is Stockholm's historic treasures. OK, it's no Rome or Athens, but it does have records going back to the year 1252. Dating from 1697, the Swedish royal palace is the biggest palace still used by a king. Whilst another must-see attraction is Stockholm's beautiful City Hall, home of the world-famous Nobel Prize. But Stockholm is still a small city to make it to our top 10, so what is the key to its success?
The Swedes have really got a sense of what's important about the city, and they've made sure that it is both happening, that there's vast amounts of cultural activity always going on, and that it's a very welcoming place for the visitor.
It's maintaining itself as a sort of chic, elegant, but not pretentious city destination, and I'm all for Stockholm.
Istanbul is a completely unique city. It's a fusion of East and West, two religions, two continents.
I have to say that Istanbul is probably my favourite city in the world. By far the biggest city in Europe, or is it in Asia?
And you actually see Asia and the Middle East beginning in front of your eyes. It's got a wonderful river, as most of the best cities have. Just sail up the Bosphorus at sunset.
The Bosphorus is the lifeblood of Istanbul and flows between the Sea of Marmara and the Black Sea, and is quite literally the dividing line between two continents.
So you've got on one side of the Bosphorus Asia and on the other side Europe. That makes it a very special town culturally as well, because you had so many influences under the old Ottoman Empire.
Around every corner there's just so much history from every era. You just can't believe it.
Istanbul's importance is not to be underrated. Under its previous guises of Constantinople and Byzantium, Istanbul was capital of the Ottoman, Byzantine and Eastern Roman empires.
What has Istanbul not got? Wonderful, beautiful mosques.
The Hagia Sophia was built 1400 years ago.
You'll see the Hagia Sophia Cathedral, which was a great Byzantine cathedral that later became a mosque.
Whilst the Blue Mosque was constructed in the 17th century to rival it.
If there's one thing you really mustn't miss, it is the Grand Bazaar. There are something like 4,000 stalls for a start. It's wonderfully exotic, sort of clouds of spices, great clothes against silks and satins.
Whether you come to shop in the bazaar or soak up the history, Istanbul is one of the most beautiful and least expensive European, or is that Middle Eastern, cities.
Cape Town is one of the world's most beautiful cities because it sits right at the tip of Africa with oceans on either side.
It really is one of the most dreamy cities anywhere in the world.
It is a cosmopolitan swinging city, but yet it's all about the elements. It's the big skies, it's the sea.
Of course, you've got Table Mountain there, and you can take the cable car straight up with your ears going pop to get spectacular views of the southern bit of Africa.
The city's architecture is a throwback to its colonial history, a history which didn't really end until the abolition of apartheid just over 10 years ago. But people in Cape Town are now looking to the future.
After 10 years of democracy, you really get a feeling of freedom. People are really sort of on the ball, and there's an edge to the city, and there's a sense of youth and vibrancy, and it's an incredibly exciting city.
This was also the place where Nelson Mandela was incarcerated, just a few minutes offshore at Robben Island. And a trip out there gives you a true picture of what the black people in South Africa suffered, and you'll be able to understand how far they've come today in just 10 short years.
But it's the unrivaled surroundings that really take Cape Town into our 8th slot. With vineyards and wide sandy beaches in easy reach, this outpost on the southern tip of Africa is a small slice of paradise. Riding in at number 7 on the back of the Celtic Tiger is Ireland's fairest city, Dublin, an elegant Georgian city with the picturesque River Liffey running through its heart.
If you went to Dublin 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, you'd be astounded at the way the city's changed today.
Until very recently, Temple Bar was Dublin's derelict warehouse district.
Now suddenly Temple Bar is the core of one of Europe's most exciting cities.
This is where you'll find great shops, great restaurants and nightlife.
Maybe you don't want to go there on a Friday or a Saturday night where you can't move for hen parties and stag parties. The rest of the time, though, it is just one of the great urban centres.
Furthering Dublin's claim to a top 10 spot is its literary heritage. The city has been home to many of Ireland's famous writers, and Trinity College, where Oscar Wilde was a student and the famous playwright Samuel Beckett was a tutor, epitomises Dublin's role in producing some of the 20th century's greatest works. The long room in the old library is where you really feel the depth of the city's history, and as well as being home to some 200,000 books from the 12th to the 19th century, it also houses some other amazing historical artefacts.
The harp that you see in the long room is traditionally known as Ireland's oldest harp. It's probably 11th or 12th century. It's a medieval harp. It's made of willow and it has 29 brass strings. It used to be plucked with a piece of wood. But this harp is traditionally known as the model for the symbol on the back of Irish coins. You also see this harp symbol on government publications, and of course the other way around you see it on bottles of Arthur Guinness.
Which brings us neatly to what is for many the main reason for Dublin's renown. As the famous writer James Joyce said, it would be a good challenge to try to cross Dublin without passing a pub. Whether it's the Brazen Head, the oldest in Ireland where pints have been pulled since 1198, or the Victorian Stag's Head, Dublin has over 2,000 pubs, which are the heart of the crack.
The city is not really all about architecture or even history.
Mostly you're there for the crack, to go into the pubs, to meet the people, to drink their beer and to hear their music.
You might be able to tie the kangaroo down, but it's a different story with Australia's finest, Sydney, our 6th best city in the world.
Sydney has been a popular city for a while now, and I think it will remain there because it's so easygoing, so friendly.
Sydney, Australia is one of my favourite cities in the world because I like the beach. And you can be right in the middle of town and 10 minutes later on Bondi Beach with your beach towel slapping on the sunscreen.
Sydney is the youngest city in our top 10 and amazingly was founded only 200 years ago. Since then, the beautiful bay has been transformed into an iconic, world-beating city, boasting the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House, 2 of the most recognisable buildings in the world.
All the area around the Opera House, the Rocks, all the little restaurants, it's just so cosmopolitan. It's got great climate, it's got really, really good shops, and it's very young. Not in terms of like everybody's young, but the city feels young. It feels like it's got an edge to it because of it.
Sunset in the harbour is another huge plus point for Sydney. The ambience is hard to match anywhere in the world. And if Sydney's great by day, by night it gets even better, with loads to do from arias of opera to pints of lager.
It is the people. I don't normally like supporting the Australians. I hate them when it comes to sport, but my God, they do know how to live properly.
The Australians may be used to winning, but not in this poll. Have you worked out our 5 greatest cities yet? All roads lead to it. It wasn't built in a day, and some even call it eternal. But in our countdown of the world's best cities, the Great Open Air Museum of Rome makes it only to number 5.
Rome's a wonderful city because, first of all, it's so small and it's so compact, so you can walk around it freely. And walking around is a bit like a sort of living history and archaeology lesson.
You've just got history strewn all over the place, wherever you walk. People have walked there for 2,000 years. There are incredible stories. You don't know where legend begins and reality ends.
According to myth, the city was founded in 753 BC by the twins Romulus and Remus, who were brought up by a she-wolf before Romulus killed Remus and then established the city of Rome. But the story does have a happy ending, with Rome becoming the centre of the Roman Empire, the Christian world, and the Italian Renaissance.
You move from the great Roman buildings, the Forum, and the Colosseum. Then you move into the beautiful Renaissance churches, and you even move into the modern bits with the nightclubs. So you've got absolutely everything, totally compact. But what a living museum, because the Romans themselves adore it. They clatter over the cobbles, they go into the markets where they bargain. It's all mad, it's all frenetic, it's all incredibly good-natured. I just adore Rome.
Rome is all about theatre, and the heartland of this theatre is really the cafe life. Everything goes on in the cafes. You could just simply go to Rome and spend morning, noon and afternoons in a cafe, and you get a very strong sense of place.
Rome has more history than any other city, a wonderful atmosphere all of its own, and fantastic people. This timeless capital of beautiful Renaissance piazzas and Baroque fountains will draw you back time after time.
I don't know anybody who hasn't been to Rome and hasn't wandered along to the Trevi Fountain, no matter how cynical and no matter how blasé, and tossed the coin in because they want to come back to Rome. When you see Rio for the first time, you actually get a physical shock.
Rio is one exciting city. A city that contains, number one, the Corcovado, the Statue of Christ. Number two, Sugarloaf Mountain. Number three, the famous beaches of Ipanema, Flamenco, and Copacabana.
It's the most spectacular and colourful city in the world.
Then it has Carnival in February. It's normally February or March, which is extraordinary and quite frankly makes any sort of carnival you may have seen in Trinidad or Notting Hill look like a vicar's tea party.
Home to the biggest celebration on the planet, Rio is undisputedly the world's greatest party city. If you can't make it for Carnival, be sure to check out the city's other major passion at the biggest football stadium on Earth.
If you don't go to the Maracanã Stadium, you're making a big mistake. Whether you like football or not, I went, there was 90,000 people there, it wasn't even half full. It's an extraordinary, vibrant, mesmeric, intoxicating city.
The spirit of the place, there's a kind of heartbeat. Even though you've flown all those miles to get there, you find yourself waking up with more energy. Maybe it's the fact that everyone's so beautiful.
It's a whole potpourri of sort of faiths and colours and creeds. Very beautiful people. I'm not just talking about the dental floss bikinis on Copacabana.
The people are wonderful. They're probably the most friendly and lively people you'll ever meet in the world. They will gather in the morning, you'll find them playing football on the beach, then you'll find the sort of beaux coming out, looking for the girls.
The city's residents, the Carioca, love life and love their city, and at the end of the day they come out to the beach and wait for the sun to drop into the ocean and for their home to become a different kind of playground.
Nights in Rio tend to have a sort of momentum of their own. Maybe it's the caipirinhas, but something makes you just feel as if you can be at it all night.
Other cities might have history or architecture. Rio de Janeiro is sexy. The people are sexy. The beaches are sexy. The nightlife is sexy. In fact, there's so much love in the place, it's hard to see why Rio fails to make it into that all-important top 3. After the break, we'll be revealing our favourite top 3 cities in the world. And if you haven't guessed what they are yet, here's a clue. There's a Spanish sizzler, an American beauty, and a French flambé. But which will be number 1? Welcome back to part 4. It's crunch time, where we reveal which 3 cities battled their way to the top of our poll of leading travel journalists. Before we do that, here's 3 cities that fell just short of our top 20. Picturesque Prague, high-rise Hong Kong, and cinematic San Francisco. Now let's see which city romanced its way to our number 3. In bronze medal position, it's Gay Paris, combining some of the world's most recognisable sights, great shopping, a wealth of museums for the cultural connoisseur, and some of the finest restaurants on earth.
Paris is simply the most beautiful city in the world. Every time you turn around, you will see one magnificent building after another.
It's very easy, it's very seductive.
You've got the river running right through it, so that's the great theme of Paris.
I love walking along the Seine, this incredibly graceful artery that runs through the city.
By all means, notch up the big ones, you know, the Eiffel Tower, the Champs-Élysées. Get those and then try and go back and live Paris. Go to the wonderful markets, the flea market at the Porte de Clignancourt.
To reach number 3 in our chart, you need more than a few ropey knickknacks, and in the flea markets you can pick up a real piece of Parisian history. As much as it embraces the past, Paris sets trends. It's the undisputed home of haute couture. But as well as designer shops, you can pick up unique and affordable Parisian chic at the many side street boutiques. What really gives Paris the edge is the café culture. You can take the weight off your feet in one of the thousands of cafes, sip a chocolat chaud, and set the world to rights in the footsteps of the famous French philosophers.
It's those lovely hidden corners which make you feel that Paris is the most romantic, the most beautiful city in the world.
New York, New York. OK, so they named it twice, but that doesn't win it any extra points in our poll, and it's been pipped at the post.
I'm actually quite angry that New York didn't make it to number 1.
There's a kind of energy and a can-do attitude that is incredibly energising.
Keeps you busy, you've got lots to do, you've got restaurants, you've got hotels, you've got museums, you've got parks, and it can all be done in a very concentrated area.
No other city is confident enough to call itself the capital of the world, and no other city would get away with it.
And one of the most amazing things about it is a great walking city because it is so condensed.
Whether it's the neon extravaganza of Times Square, the unmistakable spire of the Empire State, the retro sleek lines of the Flatiron Building, or the burlesque swirls of the Guggenheim Museum, New York's buildings are some of the most recognizable in the world.
One of the great walks of the world is to walk from Wall Street, down in the southern end of Manhattan, and walk all the way up Broadway. Be impressed, amazed and flabbergasted by the scale of everything. It's a very vertical city by nature of the fact that it all has to be crammed into an island. You will feel like an ant, you will feel very, very small, but you will feel a great boost of energy by being part of this metropolis, and that's what it is. It's a metropolis.
But New York isn't all metropolis. It has one of the greatest parks on the planet.
Without Central Park, you'd feel totally claustrophobic. I think it's psychologically incredibly important to have that green lung in the middle of Manhattan.
It's not in every big city that you can feel you're lost in the wilds of nature, but despite being slap bang in one of the world's most hectic cities, you can in Central Park. Every other corner seems to offer a scene from a film or a famous event. In Central Park, Strawberry Fields is a monument to the great John Lennon, who was gunned down outside the Dakota Building, which stands nearby. With all this, it's hard to imagine New York being beaten, but it has been.
I challenge anybody to say that there is a city better than New York.
So what city can possibly beat the history of Rome, the sexiness of Rio, the romance of Paris, and the sheer scale of New York City? We'll find out after a Top 10 recap. At 10, the cool Scandinavian city of Stockholm. At 9, straddling 2 continents, Istanbul. At 8, the wonderful Cape Town. And at number 7, the Irish crack in Dublin. Sydney and its world-famous sights came in at 6. There was a Roman holiday at 5. And at number 4, super sexy Rio de Janeiro. Making the top 3 was Gay Paris, and at number 2, the Big Apple, New York City. So which city is our number 1?
We've all decided that this is the place to go. We're all piling in our millions.
It's very easy to travel around.
These incredible buildings that seem to melt as you look at them.
Fantastic party street life.
It even has a beach.
If you'd asked people 20 years ago, you would not even have seen Barcelona in the top 20, let alone at the top. It's been utterly transformed. It's come to life after the decades of oppression by Franco. You've had things like the Olympics in '92, which gave the city a sense of identity, of purpose.
The Catalans took it over. It's their showpiece. They absolutely turned their city around. They gave it a beach, a lovely clean beach, so you can go and chill out when you've been to museums and your cathedrals.
Barcelona combines a beautiful historical city with great food and an amazing beach setting. The city also boasts arguably the craziest yet most inspired architect in history.
There are many other great cities in the world, but what gives Barcelona the edge? It's Antoni Gaudí. What an amazing guy. His imprint is everywhere in Barcelona.
Antoni Gaudí's most famous building is the truly awe-inspiring La Sagrada Familia. It is without doubt Barcelona's biggest attraction. It was begun in 1882 and it still isn't finished. But Gaudí didn't only build the Sagrada Familia, and traces of his genius catch you by surprise all around the city.
These incredible buildings that seem to melt as you look at them. Nowhere else has that kind of imagination, that kind of artistry. I think that's why Barcelona is #1.